The hospital ship floated in the darkness of space like a beacon of hope. Its white hull gleamed under the distant stars, and massive red crosses marked every side. Anyone could see it from millions of miles away. The HMHS Florence Nightingale was the largest medical vessel humanity had ever built. It carried no weapons. It needed none. The ship existed for one purpose only: to heal. Dr. Sarah Chen walked through the medical bay, checking on her patients. Some were human soldiers with missing limbs. Others were alien civilians caught in crossfire. A few were even enemy combatants from the Corinthian Dominion. She treated them all the same. Pain did not care about species or sides. Neither did she. The Corinthians were a proud race. They looked like upright reptiles with scales that shimmered bronze and gold. Their empire stretched across 200 star systems. They were warriors bred for combat, raised on stories of conquest. They viewed the universe through a simple lens. The strong dominated, the weak perished. When humanity first encountered the Corinthians, there had been hope for peace. Humans offered trade, knowledge, friendship. The Corinthians saw only soft creatures who talked too much and fought too little. They tested human borders, small raids at first, then larger ones. War became inevitable, but even in war, humanity held to certain rules. The Florence Nightingale broadcast its medical codes on every frequency. It announced its position clearly. It treated anyone who came seeking help. The Galactic Geneva Conventions protected such vessels. Every civilized species in the galaxy respected hospital ships. Captain James Morrison stood on the bridge, reviewing the day's patient intake. 57 new arrivals, 12 humans, 20 Corinthians, the rest from smaller species caught between the two powers. His crew worked without rest, performing surgeries, setting bones, treating burns from plasma weapons. The alert came suddenly. A Corinthian warship dropped out of faster-than-light travel nearby. Captain Morrison frowned but was not worried. They encountered military vessels often. Both sides knew the rules. His communications officer looked up. "Captain, we're being hailed. It's Ambassador Krethkal of the Dominion." Morrison nodded. "Put him through." The view screen flickered. A tall Corinthian appeared, his scales darker than most, marking him as high-ranking. His eyes were cold and yellow. "Human vessel," Krethkal said, his voice like gravel. "You harbor enemies of the Dominion. You will surrender all Corinthian patients to us immediately." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. "Ambassador, you know we cannot do that. This is a protected medical vessel. We treat all patients equally and release none to military custody. The Galactic Geneva Conventions are clear." Krethkal's lips pulled back, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Your conventions are words written by the weak. We do not honor them." "Then you dishonor yourselves," Morrison replied quietly. "We have your wounded aboard. We are saving their lives. Is that not worth something?" "Weakness," the Corinthian spat. "You save those who would kill you. This is not mercy. This is foolishness. You will comply or face consequences." Morrison straightened in his chair. "We will not comply. We are a hospital ship. We are unarmed and protected under interstellar law. If you fire on us, you commit a war crime that will echo across the galaxy." Krethkal leaned forward. "Perhaps the galaxy needs to learn that Corinthian strength respects no paper laws." The screen went dark. Morrison's first officer turned to him, face pale. "Captain, they wouldn't actually—" The ship shuddered. Alarm screamed. Red lights flooded the bridge. "Shields failing," someone shouted. But the Florence Nightingale had no shields. Only minimal deflectors to protect against space debris. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. "Medical Bay 3 is venting atmosphere." "We're hit again." Morrison grabbed his console. "All hands, this is the captain. Emergency evacuations protocols. Get everyone to the escape pods. Medical staff, save who you can." The ship trembled again. And again. The Corinthian warship fired methodically, tearing through the hospital vessel like it was made of paper. Dr. Chen was thrown against a wall as the medical bay exploded outward. She felt the terrible cold of space rushing in. Patients who moments ago had been resting peacefully were now screaming, dying, floating into the void. She grabbed a patient, a young human soldier, and pushed him toward the escape corridor. Her hands found another, a Corinthian child who had been injured in a civilian bombing. She shoved them both forward. The hull split open above her. She looked up and saw stars. Beautiful, cold, indifferent stars. Then she saw nothing at all. The Corinthian warship stopped firing. Of the 3,000 souls aboard the Florence Nightingale, only 153 survived. Most were in escape pods that had jettisoned before the main hull was destroyed. The rest floated in wreckage, bleeding, dying, praying. Rescue ships arrived 6 hours later. They found debris spread across thousands of miles, bodies frozen in space, medical equipment scattered like toys. They found Dr. Chen barely alive, her suit's emergency beacon the only thing that saved her. She lived long enough to reach a hospital, long enough to testify, long enough to tell the universe what had happened. Then she closed her eyes and joined her patients in whatever came after. Across human space, the news spread like wildfire. The Corinthians had fired on a hospital ship. They had killed healers. They had murdered the wounded and the doctors trying to save them. Humanity's response was immediate and uniform. Every human vessel in Corinthian space turned around and left. Every embassy closed. Every communication channel went silent. No explanations. No threats. No warnings, just silence. The Corinthians celebrated. Their propaganda networks declared victory. They had shown the humans what true strength looked like. They had proven that Corinthian might respected no weakness, no rules, no mercy. In their capital city on Corinth Prime, citizens looked up at their moon, Saelthos, and saw its lights twinkling as they always had. 4 million Corinthians lived there in cities built over centuries. It was their first conquest of space, their proudest achievement. Every night, parents pointed up at those lights and told their children stories of their great civilization. They had no idea that in 72 hours their moon would stop speaking, and that when it did, the Corinthian dominion would learn what true strength really meant. 3 weeks had passed since the Florence Nightingale burned. The Corinthian dominion basked in what they believed was victory. Their news channels replayed the footage of the hospital ship exploding. They called it a lesson. They called it necessary. They called it strength. But in the military intelligence centers, some Corinthians were starting to feel uncomfortable. First, Talon Vreshna stood in the command center on Corinth Prime, studying the star charts with growing unease. He was a career military officer, scaled in deep bronze with eyes that had seen 40 years of warfare. Those eyes now tracked something that should not be possible. "Show me again," he ordered. The technician, a younger Corinthian with nervous movements, brought up the display. "First, Talon, this is all human communication traffic in our sector for the past month." The screen showed thousands of colored lines crisscrossing space. Trade routes, military channels, civilian broadcasts, everything. Then the technician pressed a button and the view jumped forward to the current day. The screen was empty. Completely empty. "They are just being quiet," one of his officers suggested, licking their wounds. Vreshna shook his head slowly. "No, this is not quiet. This is silence. Total silence. Not a single human transmission anywhere in our monitored space. Not even civilian chatter. Not even automated trading beacons." He pulled up another display. "And look at this. 3 weeks ago we had 47 human vessels in our territory. Traders mostly. A few diplomatic ships. Some science vessels. Today how many?" "0, First Talon. 0, Vreshna repeated. They all left. Within hours of the hospital ship incident. No explanations. No protests. They just left. Another officer spoke up. "Perhaps they are cowards after all. We showed them strength and they fled." Vreshna wanted to believe that, but his instincts, honed over decades of combat, told him otherwise. When prey ran, they were noisy. They panicked. They made mistakes. This was not the behavior of prey. This was the behavior of a predator disappearing before a hunt. More reports came in over the following days. Each one added to the growing unease. All human embassy staff had evacuated. Not just from the Dominion, but from every ally of the Dominion. The Cathari clans, who had a trade agreement with the Corinthians, reported their human diplomats had left suddenly, citing technical difficulties. The Rift Collective, neutral traders who worked with everyone, had closed their human exchange offices. When asked why, they gave vague answers about policy reviews. Even individual humans who had lived in Dominion space for years had disappeared. Scientists on joint research projects, exchange students, traders who had married Corinthians and settled down, all gone, as if they had never existed. Vreshna called a meeting with his intelligence chiefs. They gathered in a secure room, scales reflecting the dim blue light. "Where are they?" he asked simply. No one had an answer. One intelligence officer pulled up a galactic map. "We have tracking data on most human military vessels. Before the incident, they were distributed normally across their territory and in neutral zones. After the incident, she highlighted dozens of fleets. They pulled back. All of them. Every single human warship withdrew to their core systems. Preparing for invasion? Someone suggested. Or preparing to defend against ours, another added, but Vreshna shook his head. The positioning was wrong for either scenario. The human fleets were not massing at the border. They were not fortifying defensive positions. They were just waiting, sitting in their space, doing nothing visible. What about their allies? Vreshna asked. The intelligence officer looked uncomfortable. First Talon, this is where it gets strange. The Centauran Commonwealth has stopped answering our communications. They claim technical issues. The Deneb Federation is reviewing their treaty with us. The Vega Consensus has closed their borders to our ships, citing maintenance. All of them, every species that has close ties with humanity, has suddenly found reasons to avoid us. It is as if, she paused, as if what? Vreshna demanded. As if they are afraid to be associated with us, First Talon. The room fell silent. Corinthians did not inspire fear by being avoided. They inspired fear by being confronted. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. That night, Vreshna stood on his balcony looking up at the sky. His daughter was up there on Seltos. She was a teacher in one of the moon's cities. He could see the lights of her city from here, a cluster of brightness on the lunar surface. He had called her earlier just to hear her voice. She was happy, talking about her students, making plans to visit home next month. The moon looked peaceful, eternal, untouchable. His communicator beeped. An urgent message. He went back inside and opened it. The message came through on an old emergency frequency, one rarely used. The header showed it originated from outside Dominion space. The language was perfect Corinthian, grammatically flawless. Vreshna read it once, then again, then a third time, his blood running cold. You fired on healers. You killed Mercy itself. We will not fire on your moon. We will not need to. Look up tonight. Your children should remember what it looked like when it still spoke. Below the message were coordinates, Seltos, and a timestamp. 72 hours from now. Vreshna immediately forwarded the message to military command, to the council, to every authority he could think of. Within the hour, emergency meetings were called. Scientists were pulled from sleep. Military strategists gathered. What does it mean? The High Council demanded. No one knew. The humans said they would not fire on the moon. So what would they do? Invasion? Biological weapon? Some new technology? Teams worked around the clock, analyzing every possibility. They scanned Selthos for approaching ships. Nothing. They checked for biological threats. Nothing. They searched for bombs or sabotage. Nothing. 72 hours became 60. Then 48. Then 24. Vreshna barely slept. He kept looking at the moon through telescopes. Everything appeared normal. Ships came and went. Communications were steady. His daughter sent him messages, cheerful and unaware of any threat. 12 hours remained. The Dominion fleet moved into defensive positions around Selthos. Thousands of warships ready to intercept anything. 6 hours. Still nothing. Maybe it was a bluff. Maybe the humans were just trying to scare them. 1 hour. Vreshna stood with the High Council in the command center. Every screen showed Selthos from different angles. Sensors swept every frequency. Everyone waited. 30 minutes. 10 minutes. And then, exactly on schedule, 6 human ships appeared. They did not come from faster-than-light travel. They simply phased into existence, 6 points around the moon, perfectly positioned. The Dominion fleet opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts crossed space, enough firepower to destroy a planet. The human ships flickered and vanished like ghosts, then reappeared unharmed in exactly the same positions. Vreshna watched, his heart's pounding. The human vessels were small, barely the size of frigates. They did not fire back. They did not move threateningly. They simply held position. Then they activated something. The sensors went mad. Every screen showed different readings. The technicians shouted over each other, and on Selthos every single transmission stopped. Every communication, every broadcast, every signal, the light still shone. The city still glowed. But the moon had gone completely, utterly, perfectly silent. Vreshna tried to call his daughter. The line would not connect. He tried again. Nothing. He looked up at the moon through the observation window, seeing the lights of her city twinkling in the distance. She was right there. He could see her home, but he could not reach her. The moon had stopped speaking. And Vreshna understood with terrible clarity that humanity had just begun teaching them what mercy truly meant. Admiral Victoria Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the stealth carrier Vindication. watching the moon called Saelthos on her displays. Her face showed no emotion. Her uniform was perfect. Her hands were steady. No one looking at her would know that her brother had died screaming in the cold vacuum of space when the Florence Nightingale exploded. But she knew. She remembered the message from the rescue team. She remembered identifying what was left of him. She remembered his daughter, her niece, asking why Uncle Marcus was not coming home. This was not about revenge. Revenge was hot, angry, stupid. This was something else. This was a lesson delivered with surgical precision. Status? She asked quietly. Her operations officer checked his displays. All 6 suppression ships in position, Admiral. The quantum barrier is stable. No signals entering or leaving the lunar surface. The cage is perfect. Corinthian fleet? Still attempting to engage. They have fired on our ships 47 times. Each time we phase shift and return. They are starting to understand they cannot touch us. Okonkwo nodded. The technology was not new. Humanity had developed quantum phase shifting decades ago. Most species thought it was useful only for stealth or quick escapes. They did not understand that with the right positioning, with perfect timing, a ship could become effectively immortal in a limited space. Untouchable, unkillable, eternal. 6 ships. That was all it took. 6 ships positioned at precise points around a moon, each generating a quantum suppression field. Where the fields overlapped, they created a cage, not a physical barrier, something far more sophisticated. Every electromagnetic signal, every radio wave, every quantum communication pulse that tried to leave Saelthos was absorbed into the field and converted to heat, which was then radiated harmlessly into space. Nothing got through. Not a whisper. Not a bite. Nothing. The technician who had designed it, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, stood nearby. She had worked for 3 weeks without sleep, surviving on stimulants and anger. Her wife had been a nurse on the Florence Nightingale. How long can we maintain this? Okonkwo asked her. Dr. Tanaka did not look up from her calculations. Indefinitely, Admiral. The ships draw power from quantum vacuum fluctuations. As long as space exists, we can hold this position. Forever if necessary. And the people on the moon? Are they harmed? No, they experience nothing. Their local communications work fine. Their power grids function. Their atmosphere is stable. From their perspective, the only oddity is that no ships have arrived and no outside messages get through. They will think it is a technical problem at first. Then they will start to worry. Then panic. But they will not be hurt. Not physically. Okonkwo knew what went unsaid. The people on Saelthos would not be hurt. But the people on the planet below looking up at their moon every night, seeing its lights but unable to call it. Unable to reach it. Unable to hear from their loved ones there. They would be hurt very much indeed. On Corinth Prime, the realization was spreading like a disease. Vreshna stood in the communications center, trying for the 100th time to reach his daughter. Every frequency was attempted. Every protocol was tried. Military channels, civilian channels, emergency beacons. Nothing worked. The signal went out, traveled up toward the moon, and simply disappeared into nothing. Other Corinthians crowded the centers. Thousands of them. Millions. Everyone who had family or friends on Saelthos. A mother trying to reach her son. A husband calling for his wife. Children wanting to talk to their grandparents. The lunar colony had 4 million inhabitants. That meant nearly 20 million Corinthians on the homeworld had someone up there they loved. 20 million people now staring at a moon they could see but could not touch. The first suicide happened on day 2. An elderly Corinthian whose entire family lived on the moon. He could not bear the sight of those lights, knowing his children were there but unreachable. He left a note blaming the government for firing on the hospital ship. More followed. The mental health centers overflowed. Corinthians were not an emotional species by human standards, but this was different. This was a very specific torture, designed with their psychology in mind. The scientists worked desperately to break the barrier. They sent probes which vanished into the field and were never heard from again. They fired communications lasers, which were absorbed. They even tried quantum entangled particles, which somehow lost their entanglement when crossing the barrier. It is impossible, one scientist declared in frustration. This level of quantum suppression requires technology we do not possess. The energy requirements should be enormous, yet we detect no power signatures. The humans have achieved something that our theories say cannot work. Vreshna visited the scientist's lab. Then our theories are wrong. Find a way. First, Tal and I have been trying. We all have. But understand what they have done. They have not jammed the signals. Jamming can be overcome. They have created a perfect quantum absorption field. Every signal, every particle, every wave that enters the field is trapped and neutralized. It is like trying to shout into a wall of infinite depth. The sound never bounces back. It just disappears. Days passed. Then a week. The Dominion's economy began to shake. People stopped working, spending their days at communication centers hoping for any sign from the moon. Riots broke out. Military units refused orders, wanting to stay near communication equipment in case their families called. The High Council met in emergency session. Ambassador Krethkal, who had given the order to fire on the Florence Nightingale, was conspicuously absent. Rumor said he had been found dead in his chambers. Officially, it was called a heart failure. Unofficially, everyone knew he had taken his own life after his mate on Cieltho stopped answering his calls. "We must negotiate," one counselor said. "This cannot continue." "Negotiate?" Another roared. "They have taken our moon hostage." "This is an act of war." "We are already at war, you fool." "And they are winning without firing a shot." Vreshna was called to testify. He stood before the council, aware that his scales had dulled from stress, that he had not slept properly in days. "First Talon, your military assessment. Can we break this blockade?" He took a breath. "No, counselors, we cannot. The human ships are untouchable through quantum phase technology. Every attack we launch simply passes through them or is absorbed. We could dedicate our entire fleet to the task and the result would be the same. They have positioned themselves in a way that makes them effectively invulnerable in that specific space. What if we attack human territory? Force them to withdraw? We tried that already, counselor. It led to this. I do not recommend escalation. They have shown us they can hurt us without violence. If we attack them further, they may decide violence is acceptable after all." An older counselor, scales gray with age, spoke quietly. "What do they want?" Vreshna pulled up the message they had received. The words glowed on the chamber screens. "They want us to learn. They want us to understand what we did when we fired on healers. They want us to feel loss, to experience what it means when mercy is absent. But our people on the moon have done nothing wrong. Neither had the doctors on the Florence Nightingale, counselor." That is precisely the point. The silence in the chamber was heavy. Finally, someone asked the question everyone was thinking. How long will they do this? Vreshna looked up at the view screen showing Cielthos, its lights twinkling in the darkness of space. As long as it takes. On the Vindication, Admiral Okonkov received daily reports. Suicide rates on Krinth Prime. Economic collapse indices. Social unrest measurements. Military morale assessments. Every data point showed the Dominion breaking under the weight of what they had lost. "Admiral," her first officer said quietly, "some of the crew are asking, is this too much? We are hurting billions of civilians who had nothing to do with the attack." Okonkwo turned to face him. Her eyes were hard. "Commander, those same civilians cheered when the Florence Nightingale burned. Their news network celebrated. Their government, which they support, gave the order. They are not innocents. They are a society that chose strength over mercy, violence over compassion. Now they are learning what the universe looks like when mercy is absent." She looked back at the moon on her screen. "We are not harming anyone on Cielthos. They are safe, fed, healthy. We are simply making sure their families below know they are there, but cannot reach them, just as the families of our dead knew their loved ones were on that hospital ship, knew they needed help, and could do nothing but watch them die." The first officer nodded slowly. "How long, Admiral?" "Until they beg," Okonkwo said simply. "Until they understand what mercy costs and why you never ever fire on those who give it freely." She looked out at the stars. "My brother believed every life was worth saving. Even Corinthian lives. He died for that belief. The least I can do is make sure his death meant something. Make sure no one ever makes his mistake again." The 6 ships held their position, silent and eternal, keeping their vigil over a moon that could no longer speak. On Cielthos, nobody knew they were prisoners yet. Not really. Karashin stood in her classroom teaching young Corinthians about their history. She was Vreshna's daughter, though she rarely thought about her father's military career. She preferred books to battles, students to soldiers. The children listened as she described the early days of space exploration, when their ancestors first came to this moon. "And that is why we celebrate Foundation Day," she concluded. "Because our people proved that Corinthians could thrive anywhere, even in the void between worlds." After class, she tried to call her father, like she did every week. The call would not connect. She frowned and tried again. Still nothing. She checked the network status. Everything showed green, working normally. Perhaps it was an issue on the planet's side. She tried calling her friend who lived in another city on Celtos. That call went through immediately. Having trouble with off-moon calls? Her friend asked. Yes, you too? Everyone is. No ships have arrived in 3 days either. The spaceport is saying it is some kind of solar interference. Nothing to worry about. But Karishin felt a flutter of worry anyway. In 40 years of living on Celtos, she had never seen all communications stop. Never seen ships stop arriving. Something was wrong. Days passed. Then weeks. The solar interference explanation stopped making sense. The colony's leaders held meetings. Supplies were not running low, not yet. But the psychological impact was growing. 4 million people slowly realizing they were cut off from the rest of their species. Panic came in stages. First denial, then anger, then fear. Karishin watched her neighbors change. Some refused to believe anything was wrong. Others became convinced it was an attack. A few spoke of sabotage or conspiracy. She stood on her balcony at night looking up at Krinth Prime hanging in their sky. The planet was so close, so beautiful. Swirled with clouds and continents, she could see lights on the surface, cities glowing. Her father was down there somewhere. Could he see her moon? Could he see her city's lights? The thought comforted and terrified her at the same time. On Krinth Prime, the breaking was complete. The dominion that had been so proud, so strong, was shattering from within. Breshna stood in his apartment, which had become a shrine to his daughter. Photos covered the walls. Her childhood drawings, her graduation portrait, a clay sculpture she had made him as a gift. He stared at these relics of her life and felt the weight of his failures. He had risen high in the military. He had won battles, earned medals, served with honor, and now he could not do the one thing that mattered. He could not reach his child. Every night he stood on his balcony and looked up at Celtos. He could see her city, that cluster of lights in the northern region. Sometimes he imagined he could pick out which light was her apartment. He would stare at that light and try to will his love across the void. But the void absorbed everything, giving nothing back. The Galactic Council finally convened. It took weeks because travel was slow, and every species wanted to carefully consider their position. This was unprecedented. A total communications blockade of a populated world, maintained indefinitely. It was horrifying. It was genius. It was terrifying. The council chambers floated in neutral space, a massive station where representatives of 100 species gathered. The Krinthian delegation arrived broken, their scales dull, their movements defeated. The human delegation, led by Ambassador Chen, Sarah's younger sister, was perfectly composed. The Threkan representative, an insectoid species known for their bluntness, spoke first. Humanity has committed an act of extraordinary cruelty. We must address this. Ambassador Chen stood. She was tall, dark-skinned, her hair pulled back severely. Her eyes were dry but hard as diamonds. May I present evidence? She played the recordings. The Florence Nightingale broadcasting its medical codes. The Krinthian demand. The refusal. Then the attack shown from multiple angles. Bodies floating in space. Escape pods burning. Dr. Sarah Chen's final testimony. Her voice weak but clear, describing how patients died in her arms. The chamber was silent when the recordings ended. Then Ambassador Chen spoke. The Krinthian Dominion fired on an unarmed medical vessel. They killed healers who had done nothing but offer aid to all sides. They murdered the wounded and the doctors treating them. They celebrated this action publicly. They called it strength. She paused, letting that sink in. What humanity has done in response is this. We have ensured that no one on Celtos has been harmed. Not one. They are alive, healthy, safe. Their power works. Their water flows. Their atmosphere is stable. We have imprisoned no one. We have killed no one. We have simply made it so the people of Krinth Prime can see their moon, can see their loved ones' homes, but cannot reach them. A counselor from the Deneb Federation asked, Is that not a form of torture? Is it torture to give someone exactly what they gave us? Chen replied, We watched our people die on screens, unable to help. Now they watch their people live on a moon, unable to speak to them. We did not choose this method out of cruelty. We chose it because it teaches a lesson that must be learned. She activated another display. It showed documents, treaty signatures, protocols. The Galactic Geneva Conventions were written for a reason. They protect healers. They protect the wounded. They protect medical vessels. Every civilized species has signed these conventions. The Corinthians signed them 200 years ago, then they chose to ignore them. The Draktar representative, a carnivorous species that rarely spoke, clicked their mandibles. Humanity could have destroyed the moon, killed millions in revenge. Instead, you created a punishment that kills no one but breaks their spirit. This is efficient. Terrible, but efficient. We do not want efficiency, Chen said coldly. We want understanding. We want every species in this galaxy to know that if you fire on healers, if you kill doctors and nurses and patients, humanity will not simply kill you in return. We will make you wish we had. We will take something you love and hold it just out of reach until you understand what you have done. She looked directly at the Corinthian delegation. You mistook mercy for weakness. You thought because we heal we cannot hurt. You learned you were wrong. But the lesson is not complete. You must feel this. You must understand what loss means, what absence means, what it is to see something precious and be unable to touch it. The Corinthian delegate, an old female named Seshka, stood with difficulty. Her voice trembled. We understand, please, we beg you. Let our moon speak again. No, Chen said simply. Not yet. Understanding is not enough. Change is required. Your government must dismantle its offensive military. You must ratify the Galactic Geneva Conventions without alteration. You must pay reparations to every family affected by your attack. You must build a monument to the dead that can be seen from space so your children and their children never forget. She leaned forward. Most importantly, you must teach. Teach your young what mercy costs. Teach them why healers are sacred. Teach them that the hand extended in friendship should never be bitten. Teach them that humanity will forgive, but humanity never forgets. If we do all this, Seshka asked, her voice small, then your moon will speak again. But know this. We will be watching. Always. If any species, anywhere, ever fires on human medical personnel again, we will respond the same way. We have the technology. We have the will. And we have infinite patience. This blockade can last 1,000 years if necessary. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species were appalled at humanity's tactics. Others were thoughtful. A few were clearly re-evaluating their own policies regarding medical vessels. The Centauran Commonwealth's representative stood. The Centaurans support humanity's position. We have suffered similar attacks in the past. Perhaps such a lesson is overdue. One by one, other species added their support. Not all, some abstained. But enough spoke in humanity's favor that the message was clear. The galaxy understood why this was happening. They might not like it, but they understood. Back on Krinth Prime, Vreshna watched the council proceedings on his view screen. He heard Ambassador Chen's words. He understood what was required. He was First Talon. He held significant influence in the military. If he spoke, others would listen. He composed a message to the High Council, to the military command, to the public. In it, he acknowledged the truth. They had fired on healers. They had committed a war crime. They had brought this suffering upon themselves. And the only way forward was to accept humanity's terms completely and without reservation. We thought strength was measured in weapons and will to use them, he wrote. We were wrong. True strength is in restraint, in mercy, in the choice to heal rather than harm. The humans showed us their strength by treating our wounded. We showed them our weakness by killing their healers. Now we must prove we can learn. We must prove we can change. For our children's sake, for the sake of those lights we see every night just out of reach. He sent the message and stood on his balcony, looking up at the moon, at his daughter's city, at the light he imagined was her home. I am sorry, Karashin, he whispered to the silent void. I am so sorry. The light twinkled back, beautiful and untouchable, like a star that had fallen to earth but could not be held. 47 days. That was how long the moon had been silent. 47 days of watching lights twinkle unreachably in the sky. 47 days of messages sent into the void with no response. 47 days of slow, grinding psychological torture. The Corinthian dominion was no longer recognizable as the empire it had been. The economy had collapsed. The military's morale was destroyed. Riots were a daily occurrence. The government barely functioned. And every night, millions of Corinthians stood outside staring up at the moon, weeping for those they could see but not touch. First, Talon Vreshna had aged decades in those 47 days. His scales had gone from bronze to dull gray. His eyes, once sharp and clear, were now hollow. He had not slept more than a few hours in weeks. But he had spent every waking moment building consensus, arguing, pleading, demanding. The High Council had finally agreed. All of them. Even the most prideful warriors had bent under the weight of collective suffering. They would accept humanity's terms. All of them, without negotiation, without reservation. Vreshna stood in the broadcasting chamber, preparing to send the message that would define the rest of Corinthian history. Cameras focused on him. Every screen in Dominion space would carry this transmission. The galaxy would witness it. He took a breath and began. His voice was rough but clear. I am First Talon Vreshna of the Corinthian Dominion. I speak with the authority of the High Council and the military command. I speak for all our people. He paused. I speak to humanity. 47 days ago, you silenced our moon. You did this because we fired upon your medical vessel, the Florence Nightingale. We killed your healers. We murdered the wounded they were treating. We celebrated this action as strength. His voice cracked slightly. We were wrong. We were blind. We were fools. We have learned what you wanted us to learn. We have felt what you wanted us to feel. We have understood that mercy is not weakness, that those who heal are sacred, that the hand extended in peace should never be met with violence. We surrender completely, without condition. We accept all terms humanity has demanded. We will dismantle 60% of our offensive military. We will ratify the Galactic Geneva Conventions without any changes. We will pay reparations to every family affected by our crime. We will build a monument visible from space dedicated to those we killed. He looked directly into the camera, tears streaming down his scaled face. And we will teach. We will teach our children what we did. We will teach them what it cost. We will teach them to never ever fire on healers. We will make sure that the name Florence Nightingale is known to every Corinthian child, and that they understand what was lost when we destroyed her. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Please, I beg you. My daughter is on that moon. Millions of parents like me look up every night and see their children's homes, but cannot speak to them. We have learned. We have changed. We have broken, please. Please let our moon speak again. The transmission ended. Vreshna collapsed in his chair, trembling. He had just done something no Corinthian leader had ever done. He had surrendered completely, publicly, admitting total defeat. The message reached human space within hours. It was reviewed, analyzed, verified. Committees discussed it. Psychologists evaluated its sincerity. Military analysts assessed the strategic implications. Admiral Victoria Okonkwo watched the recording 3 times. She saw the broken warrior begging for his child. She saw the defeat in his scales, his eyes, his posture. She thought of her brother Marcus, who had believed every life was worth saving, who had treated Corinthian wounded with the same care as human ones. She contacted her superiors. They have learned, she said simply. I recommend we accept their surrender. The response came swiftly. Humanity had gotten what it wanted. The lesson was taught. Now it was time for the final part, showing what mercy looked like when it returned. Admiral Okonkwo composed a message. It would be her voice the galaxy heard, her words that defined this moment. The transmission went out on all frequencies, impossible to miss. Her face appeared on screens across known space. I am Admiral Victoria Okonkwo of the Earth Space Forces. First Talon Vreshna, I have heard your words. Humanity has reviewed your surrender. We accept it. She paused, letting that sink in. But understand what you have bought with your acceptance. You say you have learned. We will hold you to that. You will dismantle your offensive fleets. You will sign the conventions. You will pay the reparations. You will build the monument. And most importantly, you will teach. You asked why we did this. Why we took your moon's voice instead of simply destroying you. Let me explain. She leaned forward. You are not our conquerors. We are not yours. We are not your executioners. We are the species you thought was weak because we chose to heal. You mistook our mercy for weakness. You fired on the unarmed. You killed those who asked nothing but to save lives. We could have destroyed Corinth Prime. Could have glassed your world, killed billions, ended your species. That would have been easy. Quick, final. But dead, you would have been martyrs. Your people would have remembered you as victims of human cruelty. Future Corinthians might have sought revenge. Instead, we made you feel what loss means. We made you watch something precious and be unable to touch it. We made you understand what the families of our dead felt, watching the Florence Nightingale burn, unable to help. We did not want your deaths. We wanted your understanding, and now you have it. Your moon will speak again. In 3 days, we will lower the barriers. Communications will return. Your people on Saelthos will hear your voices again. But that moon will never be the same for you. Every time you look up, you will remember these 47 days. You will remember what it felt like to be helpless, and you will never fire on healers again. More than that, you will become our advocates. Your children will learn this story. They will understand what mercy costs and why it must be protected. They will tell other species, other civilizations. The story of the night your moon stopped speaking will echo across the galaxy for generations. This was not revenge, First Talon, this was education. Revenge would have satisfied us for a moment and taught nothing. Education changes civilizations forever. She softened slightly. My brother, Dr. Marcus Okonkwo, died on the Florence Nightingale. He believed every life could be saved. Even yours. Even after what you did. This action, this lesson honors his belief more than vengeance ever could. You are alive to learn, to change, to teach others. That is what he would have wanted. Remember this, Corinthian Dominion. Remember this, Galaxy. Humanity extends its hand in peace. We heal the wounded. We show mercy. But if you strike that hand, if you fire on our healers, we will not kill you. We will do something far more effective. We will make you understand what you have done. We will make you wish you had chosen differently. We will make you our loudest advocates for peace. The Florence Nightingale died because of your choice. Let it be the last medical vessel that ever burns. Let this lesson spread. Let every species know healers are sacred. Mercy is not weakness, and humanity never forgets. In 3 days your moon speaks again. Use your voices wisely. The transmission ended. On Crinth Prime the countdown began. 72 hours. People could barely function waiting. Freshna stood vigil on his balcony watching the moon, counting the hours. On Saelthos, Karashan and the other inhabitants had no idea what was about to happen. They had adapted to their isolation, creating support networks, keeping society functioning. They did not know the entire galaxy had been watching their lights. When the moment came, it was quiet. The 6 human ships simply powered down their quantum barriers and phased back into their own space, disappearing as silently as they had arrived. On Saelthos, communication systems suddenly lit up with thousands of incoming messages. Planetary control hailed them asking for status. Ships requested permission to land, and most importantly, personal calls flooded through. Parents calling children. Children calling parents. Lovers reuniting across the void. 4 million voices crying out in joy and confusion. Karashan's communicator buzzed. Her father's name appeared. She answered and heard his voice rough with tears. Karashan, my daughter, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. She did not understand why he was apologizing. She did not yet know what had happened, what the silence had meant. But she heard his pain and said, I am here, Father, I am safe. I am here. Across Crinth Prime, similar conversations played out. Millions of reunions. Millions of tears. The relief was overwhelming. The joy was indescribable. But underneath it all was the knowledge of what had been lost and why. 3 months later, the monument was completed. It stood in the center of Saelthos' largest city, visible from orbit. A massive red cross kilometers high made of metal that would never tarnish. On it were carved the names of all who died on the Florence Nightingale. Human names, alien names, Corinthian names. All equal, all remembered. Beneath the names, in letters 10 meters tall, was a simple phrase in every galactic language. They healed us. We killed them. We learned. Never again. Freshna visited it with his daughter. She was learning the story now like all Corinthians, learning what her people had done, what it had cost, what they had learned. Father, she asked quietly, why did the humans not just kill us all? He looked up at the monument, at the red cross gleaming in the sunlight. Because, my daughter, your mother used to tell me that mercy must be earned twice by those who destroy it once. The humans showed us mercy first. We destroyed it. Now we must earn it back, not through death but through understanding, through change, through teaching others what we learned. He put his hand on her shoulder. We were wrong to think mercy was weakness. True strength is choosing not to destroy when you have the power to do so. The humans taught us that, and we will never forget. Above them, Crinth Prime hung in the sky. Its cities twinkled in the daylight. Communications flowed freely again. The universe had returned to normal. But nothing was the same. Every Corinthian knew the story now. The night their moon stopped speaking. It was taught in schools, carved into history, passed down through generations. And across the galaxy, other species took note. Medical vessels became truly sacred. The Red Cross meant something again. Healers walked safely through war zones, knowing that no one, absolutely no one, wanted to learn what the Corinthians had learned. Humanity had shown the galaxy its true strength, not in weapons, not in violence, but in the terrifying creativity of mercy withheld and then, when the lesson was learned, mercy restored. The Florence Nightingale was gone, but her legacy burned brighter than any star. And her name would never be forgotten in any language on any world. For as long as civilizations told stories of the night Mercy died and was reborn,